Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into one of the great foundational stories, a story about a family whose incredibly complex, messy, and dramatic legacy would go on to shape entire nations.
All right, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with Isaac, then follow his son Jacob's wild story, from a stolen blessing to a divine encounter, through some major drama in Haran, and finally, we'll see how a nation is born. This is a 5-act saga, all coming straight out of Genesis, chapters 26 through 30.
So first up is Isaac. Now he's the son of promise, the one who inherited the covenant from Abraham. But what's really fascinating is how he immediately finds himself walking in his father's footsteps and facing some of the very same challenges.
Right out of the gate, there's a famine in the land. And in the middle of that crisis, God speaks directly to Isaac. He says, essentially, don't panic, stay here, I'll be with you, I'll bless you, and I am going to make your descendants as numerous as the stars. This isn't just some vague reminder. This is God personally telling Isaac, hey, that massive plan I started with your dad, it's still on, and you're up next.
But then, and you just have to appreciate the raw humanity here, Isaac does the exact same thing his father did. He's afraid, so he tells the local king, Abimelech, that his beautiful wife Rebekah is just his sister. I mean, the irony is incredible, right? He just received a direct promise of divine protection, and his first move is to let fear take the wheel. It's a powerful reminder that even the people at the center of this grand story are still flawed. But here's the kicker. The divine promise doesn't get derailed by his mistake.
So Isaac begins to prosper, big time. And naturally, his success stirs up a lot of envy. The conflict zeroes in on water wells, which back then were literally the source of life. And the names of these wells, well, they tell the whole story. The first well they dig, the locals fight them for it, so they name it Esek, which means contention. It happens again with the next one, so they call it Sitnah, or opposition. But finally, they dig a well and nobody fights them for it. They name that one Rehoboth, meaning God has made room for them. It's like a literal physical map of their journey from strife to peace.
So if you take one thing away from this first chapter, it's got to be this. God's faithfulness isn't riding on our ability to be perfect. Not even close. His promises push right on through our flaws and our repeated mistakes. Now, let's see how this plays out with the next generation, because things are about to get even crazier.
And here we go, Act 2, Jacob and Esau. This is where the family drama really explodes. We're talking sibling rivalry, parental favoritism, and one single act of deceit that changes everything forever.
So here's how the whole scheme goes down. First, Isaac is old and can't see, and he asks his favorite son, Esau the hunter, to go get him some game so he can give him his final blessing. Second, their mother, Rebekah, who favors Jacob, overhears this and cooks up a plan. Third, the disguise. She puts Esau's clothes on Jacob and covers his hands and neck with goatskins to mimic his hairy brother. And fourth, the steal. Jacob goes in, lies to his blind father's face, and walks away with the firstborn's blessing. This was no simple trick. It was a cold, calculated deception.
And you get this absolutely tragic, haunting line from Isaac. He says, the voice, it's Jacob's voice. But the hands, they feel like the hands of Esau. You can just feel his confusion. His ears are telling him one thing, but his sense of touch is telling him another. He's suspicious, but he goes through with it anyway. And that one act sets off decades of conflict and sends Jacob into exile. What a heavy, pivotal moment.
The fallout is immediate, and it is brutal. Esau gets back, finds out what happened, and lets out what the Bible calls a bitter cry. His heartbreak instantly turns into pure, murderous rage. The family is just shattered. And Jacob, the new heir, he's now a fugitive, literally running for his life from the brother he just cheated.
So picture this. Jacob is on the run. He's completely alone, he has nothing, and he's sleeping out in the open. It's right here, at his absolute lowest point, that he has an encounter that will redefine his entire life. Asleep with a rock for a pillow, he has this incredible dream. He sees a stairway, a ladder, planted on the earth with its top reaching to heaven, and angels are going up and down on it. And standing above it all is God himself, who speaks directly to Jacob. He gives him the exact same promise he gave to Abraham and Isaac. Can you imagine? In his loneliest, most desperate moment, Jacob gets this profound vision that not only is he not alone, he is still a central part of God's plan.
Jacob wakes up and he is just floored. He says, surely the Lord is in this place, and I didn't even know it. He takes that stone he was sleeping on, sets it up as a pillar, and names the place Bethel. In Hebrew, Beit El literally means house of God. And this is the turning point. He's no longer just a fugitive running from his past. He is now a man with a divine mission and a promised future.
Okay, next stop, Haran. Jacob makes it to his mother's homeland. He thinks he's reached safety, but what he doesn't realize is that his past is about to catch up with him. You could say a little poetic justice is waiting for him. The deceiver is about to be deceived.
So Jacob meets his uncle Laban's two daughters. There's Leah, the older one, who's described as having tender eyes. We're not totally sure what that means, but it's clearly not as flattering as the description of her younger sister, Rachel, who is called beautiful and well-favored. And Jacob, well, he falls for Rachel instantly.
So he makes a deal. He'll work for Laban for 7 years in exchange for Rachel's hand in marriage. The Bible says those years seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her. But then comes the wedding night. And in a stunning twist, his uncle Laban switches the brides. Jacob wakes up the next morning married to Leah. The great trickster got tricked. Laban's excuse is that it's not their custom to marry off the younger daughter first. The price for Rachel? Another 7 years of work. That's 14 years of labor for the woman he loves.
But here's where the story takes another turn. The text says that the Lord saw that Leah was hated, and he had compassion on her. So while Jacob is focused on Rachel, God opens Leah's womb. She gives birth to son after son, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Think about that for a second. The overlooked, unloved wife becomes the mother of both the priestly line of Levi and the royal line of Judah, from which the kings would come.
And that brings us to our final act, where a nation is born. But it doesn't happen in some neat and tidy way. It happens through a whirlwind of bitter sibling rivalry, desperation, and yet again, divine providence.
I mean, just look at how this family grows. It is messy. Rachel, desperate with jealousy over her sister's sons, gives her maid Bilhah to Jacob, and she has 2 sons. Not to be outdone, Leah then gives her maid Zilpah to Jacob, and she has 2 more. Then Leah herself has 2 final sons. It's a full-on baby competition, fueled by pain and jealousy. And yet, through all this human dysfunction, the 12 tribes are being formed, one by one. And then at long last, the text says God remembered Rachel, and she gives birth to Joseph. And it's not just his family that's growing. Jacob's wealth is exploding. Through a clever breeding strategy, and clearly with a divine blessing, he finally outmaneuvers his deceitful father-in-law. The Bible says he increased exceedingly with huge flocks and herds and servants. He's finally prosperous and powerful enough to go home.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's that out of this incredibly messy story, a story filled with favoritism, deception, and jealousy, the very foundation of a nation is established. It shows that God's huge overarching plans can and do work through even the most flawed and complicated human relationships. It seems nothing is too messy for a divine purpose to unfold.
So let's just step back and look at the journey. In just 5 chapters, we've gone from a stolen blessing in a tent to a vision of a ladder to heaven, from 14 years of what was basically servitude to the birth of 12 sons. That initial promise to Abraham, which passed to Isaac, is now, through the chaotic life of Jacob, beginning to take the physical shape of a great nation.
You see, this story shows us that a legacy isn't forged in perfection. It's forged in struggle and conflict and through a divine faithfulness that is absolutely unwavering. If you remember one thing, remember this: a grand purpose is often built from the most imperfect materials. This story was never about perfect people. It's about a persistent God.
Which really leaves us with a big question to think about. How can a real, powerful purpose unfold, not in spite of, but right through the middle of our greatest flaws and our most intense family conflicts? It's something worth reflecting on, and it's right at the very heart of this ancient and powerful story.